For sure ready?
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute you guys and we'll get going. All right, so my name is Claire Leggett. I'm speaking to you guys about this project that I'm working toward called Inverting the Narrow Street. In speaking to you guys today, I'm also going to be discussing some previous work that I've done kind of to build up to this moment. So this work is basically discussing how to imagine other dimensions of reality inside of our third dimension of reality. There is an amazing video that I really enjoy that's called The 10 Dimensions Expanded. It's on YouTube, and it talks about, in a very simple way, the theory of the 10 dimensions. So I wanted to show you guys just a short clip from it. In showing you this clip, I'm basically bringing in the idea of how can we imagine the fourth dimension while we're in the third dimension. In order to do that, we already understand the two-dimensional objects while we're in the third, and so I use this analogy in order to kind of grow the imagination.
And a flatlander trying to...
Just one moment.
Flatlander trying to view our three-dimensional world would only be able to perceive shapes in two-dimensional cross-sections. A balloon, for instance, would start as a tiny dot, become a hollow circle which inexplicably grows to a certain size, then shrinks back to a dot before popping out of existence. And we three-dimensional human beings would seem very strange indeed to a flatlander.
So,
imagining the third dimension.
essentially, my interest there is how can we visualize planes of existence? To take that a step further, I am currently researching actually Parisian landscapes, being here in Paris and studying from landscape urban setting paintings done in Paris in art history. So you'll see this image, and I have dissected it into these triangular shapes. The lines that I'm working from are lines of perspective drawings, and so I'm interested in the psychology that we've created around formal perspective drawings. Beyond that, I'm going to show you guys some work that I've done in the past. Recently, over the last year. So this is a close-up shot of it. The work from the side looks like this. They're these raw stone canvases, and my interest in creating planes and speaking to a dimension coming toward you started from actually thinking about how to express the portrait in a sense that is outside of the figure of a face. So these works began about 5 years ago. I stepped away from them and I've recently revisited them. The stretchers that I built look like this. And I also wanted to bring in this picture of a stretcher because I wanted to talk later about the idea of how to protect your artwork, thinking about patents and copyright, and then how that also opens up into open source. So I will touch on those topics at the end. So currently in this project, I am working with the idea of video imaging. You'll see on this sketch, I will basically be taking the triangular shapes that I gain from the patterns of the paintings in art history, and then I'll turn them into these prisms coming at you rather than creating space that goes back in time. And then with those prisms, I will 3D print them, and then I will do video mapping onto those to reinvent a flat space into a sculptural space, and also play with the illusion of that sculptural space. And so I am also currently going around and taking photos of my experience in Paris currently, and I'm also dissecting these photos myself. I have one example here for you guys. And so I'm interested again in these urban settings, them setting a format for lines going back into space. And so I have this interest in this idea that in urban settings, you're always going toward a point and never arriving, because there's always this final point out in on the horizon line that we orient our formal surroundings in. We orient that from formal 1 and 2 point perspective drawings and paintings. And we don't realize that these, the formal aspects of drawing and paintings being done in 1 and 2 point perspective, that was actually a that was actually a created method for expressing space. We've now become so accustomed to how that space has been created that we accept it as the reality of space. And so what I'm trying to do is stretch as much as I showed that original video, talking about us as three-dimensional objects passing through a second two-dimensional space. How can we imagine being three-dimensional objects passing through a fourth-dimensional space? And so that's a work that I've been developing for the last several years, and going forward, some things that I'm looking at in order to create objects that I'm studying to create these prisms outside of just urban settings I'm also investigating. Did we lose the call?
I think it's good.
So I'm also investigating right now the aspect of the original sundial being a stick in the ground. I'm interested in that because I'm actually playing with the idea of taking two sticks to create one shadow. I will show you guys. So these are some studies that I've done where I've taken two sticks to create one shadow. And how can you take, again, stretching the idea of reality. So that is the project that I've been working on. In studying the sundials, the original sundials, that will inform some of the, you'll see at the top of this drawing that in order to create two shadows from the two sticks being held together, I also am relying on different light sources as well. And so these patterns will also inform some of these prism pieces as far as studying the sundials as well. And so that is the project itself. And kind of the last point that I wanted to kind of bring in is talking about and opening it up to questions, talking about an artist in the current era, and the idea of, for me, protecting my artwork, protecting the images of it, protecting things that are copyright, and actually with learning about the open source technology, having your material be open source and doing that intentionally, it's been a very kind of freeing discovery. I think before my master's program, I was really concerned as a professional artist coming in, even with putting photos on Instagram, because I know that those photos get taken and get put somewhere else, and the identity of where that photo came from, who made that art object, gets lost. And so actually coming in and intentionally making your artwork or the patterns of your artwork intentionally open source is very interesting, and something that I also want to be a part of this project. So in the past, I wanted to actually patent these stretchers, and because I was not able, it's very difficult, it's very expensive to hire a patent lawyer. And so I also considered copywriting each pattern as if it was a dress pattern. So each triangular pattern that comes together to make these, I considered copywriting them. And so what I'm doing, is basically with this project, I also want to take these pieces that I will make, whether that's through 3D modeling, whether that's through the continuation of the sewn pieces, and make those available resources so that other people can print and distribute and make them themselves as well. And so that's kind of the aspect of user technology that I'm bringing in as well. And so also for our Skype conversation, I'm going to show some of the videos that I was speaking to. This is going to be the video of, and I'm just going to, so that I know, this is going to be the video speaking about as so what would, speaking about the second dimension and the two dimension. Let me make sure that this is. Thanks, guys, for being a part of this.
Because the pipe from their mouth to their bottom would divide them into two pieces. And a flatlander trying to view our three-dimensional world would only be able to perceive shapes in two-dimensional cross-sections. A balloon, for instance, would start as a tiny dot, become a hollow circle which inexplicably grows to a certain size, then shrinks back to a dot before popping out of existence. And we three-dimensional human beings would seem very strange indeed to a flatlander. Imagining the third dimension is...
And so I was showing that video earlier again to speak to the aspect of, in three dimension, we already have a perception of what the two-dimensional space is. So how can we take the analogy of imagining what it would be like to be in two dimensions, knowing what three dimensions is, and then how can we imagine the fourth dimension? And so the other photos that I wanted to show so that you guys can see there in Colombia, thank you again for joining us, is, so these are the studies that I'm doing right now based on the original sundial. For me, I'm changing it from 1 stick to 2 stick, and then based on how you arrange those as the light is falling on them, you can make it look like there are 2 sticks with 1 shadow, or you can make it look like there is 1 stick with 2 shadows. So there I'm actually holding 2 sticks, but I have oriented them so that it looks just like one. And so this again plays with illusion. It also states that there are kind of other realities existing, other ways of looking at things, and yet we see reality as being very fixed. We see the idea of perspective lines that draw buildings as being the fixed and correct and rational way of creating space. And so my aim is to push beyond that. And so again, just to give you, again, it's the same. It's 2 set of sticks. There are 2 sticks and 1 shadow. And there are 2 sticks. They're just turned, instead of like this, they're turned like this. And then the shadows are cast down. So in both examples, you get 3 lines. You're just seeing the same objects in a different way. So I know that I kind of explored all of that in a intuitive organization, and so I just wanted to open up to any questions, and basically the process of what I'm speaking about is the current project, what my work has been up to this point, as well as speaking a little bit to user technology, low technology, and my aim to actually intentionally bring in the open source of the end result of my project so that other people have access to create these things as well. Thank you guys so much, and I'll look forward to, we'll take a look at some of the questions. Finding them. So we have a question that says, can you mention some ways that you've experienced multi-dimensions in your everyday life? That's a great question. And the way that I actually imagine multi-dimension in my life is to imagine it. And so I actually, when I'm walking down streets, I actually visualize, instead of the lines coming this way, I actually visualize the perspective lines as prisms coming at me, and that I am walking through those prisms. And so I think that also forcing myself to visualize space in that way, it brings pushes away from the idea of being a part of a void in urban settings, and kind of always being actually hugged and physically almost touched in that urban setting by imagining it that way. Just going to wait for a few more questions to come through. Yeah, so it's asking if I can imagine a way to incorporate this both in an artistic and scientific approach. So I obviously cannot claim to be a scientist. I have begun to have a high interest in quantum physics. I have a very tiny fragment of research that I've started on it. And so I have an interest in it because it's basically talking about the theories of two realities existing at the same time, as best as I can understand it. And so as far as the research going toward a science direction, that is also where I kind of see the art and science meeting, kind of in the latest cutting-edge theories about the most tiniest bits of what our reality is made up of. Yeah. Got another question coming through. Just hang tight, guys. Even though I can't interact with you guys, I hope it's been a beautiful day at the Baku Fair. Very happy to be joining you all the way from Paris. So it's asking if I know any other artists working in the multidimensional concept. Concepts?
Yeah, do you know of any other ones that I've worked with, like multi-dimensional things?
Yeah, so this is going to be a strange answer to that. I actually try to not immerse myself too much with what artists are currently doing. And I do that intentionally because I think that staying too informed on what artists are currently doing can digress what you intuitively feel you need to make. And so you can basically stay very informed on what artists are doing and then say, oh man, I can't make that because it's already been made. Oh, I have seen it over there. I am definitely learning the value of still staying exposed to work, to other artists, to how they're successfully achieving compositions and taking their concepts into ideas. I do, yeah, so directly, I feel like it's very unique, kind of odd, especially an artist of my generation, to intentionally try to not stay constantly tuned in to every present artist. It is for an intentional reason, though, because I really try to keep such a raw genuineness of what I'm doing, make sure that I'm grounded in that before I then start exploring what other artists are doing in that realm. So I don't know any other artists that are working in this way. Yeah. Got another question coming through, guys. Yeah. So it's asking, what art medium would you like most to express this. Yes?
Mhm.
Yep. So that is a really great question. I'm very intuitively inclined toward working with sewing and working with fabrics. The next step that I want to take is to work actually with sewing. Very beautiful watercolor paper actually, to create these flat prisms that will be mounted on the wall, similar to this image here, which is this image. So that's where my intuition wants to take me. I feel like there is a real reason for taking this into the 3D printing realm, taking it into the area of using plastics to speak about urban spaces. So these prisms on the wall that are shown in this drawing, is those I would really like to, I was saying, start from expanding past the fabric that I've been working in and use paper and sewing paper to create them. And then the aspect of using the plastics has as kind of a double-edged sword, because using the plastic is also speaking to petroleum that is in cities, in urban settings, and kind of speaking about the output of that waste. At the same time, I'm using the plastic, so I'm contributing to that. So again, it has that double-edged sword. So right now I'm kind of torn between and deciding on what the best material is. Sometimes, as an artist, it is better to proceed with what is intuitive, and then you're able to look back and understand the work. And sometimes it is better to use the material that's right for the concept. So dancing between that line, perhaps some could be made with the sewn paper and some could be made with the 3D printing. And so currently those are the two materials that I will explore for the work. So this question is, what lies in other dimensions is that relevant within this concept? In a scientific realm? So what lies in other dimensions? What lies in other dimensions is the idea of being outside of our sense of time. And so that's why I'm also starting to explore these coding projects, which I will show you. So it's very, very minimal coding using a program called processing. And so I'm still exploring the idea of these three lines. When they're put into motion, they start to refer to time and kind of have a reference to the clock. And so what lies outside of into other dimensions is basically pushing past our conceived notions of time. And I feel like a lot of this, I'm going to show this also here for our documentation. So this is the video that I'm showing of using processing. And so I feel like a lot of this imagining that happens of these other realities, these other dimensions rather, that the dimensions are actually there, and it's kind of like the fear of learning another language. there's a lot of, as an adult, you already have a concept about how to express yourself, and so you lose the childlike inhibition to just accept words fumbling together, to as adults we just create our own dictionary of what reality is, if you will. And so if we can expand that dictionary, I think that imagining is the first step to realizing that these dimensions are actually happening. But yes, so I think time plays a big element. So this question is asking, can you express more about how time is in relation to the dimensions? Yeah, so in directly in the, just to make that one jump directly in the fourth dimension, as the theory goes, is as much as the video of the two-dimensional person, what would they see of a three-dimensional person moving through a two-dimensional plane? So as much as there is that visual sense for the fourth dimension, basically you have almost like a three-dimensional sense of time, always existing from the start to end of your lifetime. And I can pull up, because the clip is so very much helps this analogy. So, guys.
Most intriguing aspects of there being one dimension stacked on another is that down here in the dimensions below, we can be unaware of our motion in the dimensions above. Here's a simple example. If we make a Mobius strip, take a long strip of paper, add one to in a straight line. The fourth dimension, time, feels like a straight line to us, moving from the past to the future. But that straight line in the fourth dimension is, like the Mobius strip, actually twisting and turning in the dimension above. So the long undulating snake that is us will feel like it is moving in a straight line in the fourth dimension, but there will actually be, in the fifth dimension, a multitude of paths that we can branch to at any given moment. Those branches will be influenced.
Yeah, so so basically, how can there is that analogy of all the points of our life being accessible at the same time, rather than feeling time in a linear sense. And so, before I get too much on a soapbox, I want to make sure that answered that question of other dimensions. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. It's been really exciting to be a part of the fair there in Columbia. It's been an amazing opportunity, and I just want to say thank you from everyone at the Paris College of Art and the Transdisciplinary New Media program for your time and attention, all your questions. It's been great. You guys have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the fair, and stay in touch.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Voxakis. I am doing my presentation on the art of Google Dream. So what is Google Dream? Google Dream is basically a child of Google, obviously, and what it is it's a neural network, which is basically a computer system that is modeled off of a human brain. So what it was and is, it's an artificial intelligence experiment that uses the neural network to figure out different things. So in this case, what the Google programmers were trying to do was to sort of understand how and why computers work, how they function, just to understand the concept behind how computers think and understand everything. So if you have ever used Google Dream or Google Images, you kind of actually know a little bit about Google Dream already. So if you don't know, Google has reverse image search, and you can search for things through basically just images if you search on Google. And the great thing about the image search is you can basically backtrack it. So you can put a picture in there, and then Google will basically go through every single picture that it knows in its database and tell you, oh, we think it's this, or we think it's that picture. So if you were to post reverse Google search a picture of a dog, it would say, is that a dog? And is it this specific picture that we see in our previous searches? So that being said, the Google researchers actually use the same technology to reverse that. So if you were to give it an image through Google Dream, it would bring back a version of that picture that Google would sort of guess of what it is, but it would do it to every single area on the picture itself. So for example, let me show you here. Okay, so let me bring this up. Okay, so what is this? So let's say you were to put an image of, let's say, a mountain. Okay, and this example specifically, Google, the image engine, the neural network, thinks it's actually basically said, oh, hey, this looks like a gazebo. And so it actually puts a gazebo on top of that picture that you originally put on there and changes the picture. So another example we have here is a picture of a sunflower. And when the sunflower's processed through Google Dream, what comes out is a picture of a bird. And so Google Dream is saying, oh, that kind of looks like a bird. Is that a bird? And then they put an image of a bird on top of that. And here is another example. So it's sort of reminiscent of, you know, when children or when you as a child would go to look at the sky and you would see, you would look at the clouds and you would sort of guess what that is. So, you know, you can do kind of fun things with it. You can put a picture of a cloud on there, and so then it will look at all the subtle nuances of the pixels and try to figure out what that is. So some fun things that people have been doing is they've been processing it multiple times, to the point where you process it 10 times and there's many levels of pictures within the original picture. So why did they do this? So the technicians at Google wanted to see basically how a computer decides what it decides. Even though they created the coding for that, they still want to see how the actual computer decides certain things. And this sort of goes more into artificial intelligence. So to further understand artificial intelligence and to understand just generally AI technologies or artificial intelligence. So the question is, where is that going to lead us, and where is this step leading us? So with this, you can sort of see how computers function, how they think, basically. And the thing I love about this is that artists have sort of taken advantage of this experiment that was originally purely scientific, and they created this beautiful thing, this artwork, this very low tech in the sense of people have created this coding or moved this coding onto the web, so you can basically upload an image and it can output the Google Dream version of that image. So it's wonderful in its sort of spontaneity and its unpredictability. And so the question I ask is is this going to last? Is this sort of kind of art medium going to last? Or is it just sort of a fleeting fad? It sort of became viral for a little bit, and people seem to like it a lot, but the question is, are artists really going to use this beyond sort of a fun, quick little thing that they're sort of passively using? And who does this benefit? Does it benefit the scientists more or the creative professionals? Now, as far as the creative professionals go, the question is, how can you use this in other mediums beyond pictures? How can we go beyond the picture aspect of things? Because we can go beyond the picture aspect of things with possibly video and or use this processing through that. So, one second. So then, as far as art goes, when science and art sort of combine, what's created? And the great thing about this is it's sort of a combination of science, tech, and art that is easily accessible for everyone to use, to the point where it's sort of like a hybridization of everything. And it can lead us, it's obviously already led us to things like, the medium of new media, which is what my master's degree is in, and kind of combining different mediums with computers and everything. So, beyond that, I wanted to sort of talk about the idea of humans and technology coming together and creating art. So, can I see that question again? So I have a question that says, if in a high-tech tool, low-tech could be focused on its processing. Not sure if I understand that.
You're just asking about the artificial intelligence aspect?
Yes, I'm talking about artificial intelligence.
Maybe expand on that.
But it's saying that, low tech could just focus on its process then?
And so what's kind of maybe the bare minimum aspect of the Google Dream? rather than the heightened technology of the algorithms. Like, what is the application of flow?
Okay, like, so how does it, like, actually function as far as the coding goes?
Perhaps we will.
Well, okay, so obviously, like, artificial intelligence is super advanced and super high tech in that sense, but it sort of brings us to like, how can we use high tech into like a low tech technology, and that's sort of what Google Dream is. It was originally very much like a high tech experiment, which was used in a very low tech manner to create different things. And that's sort of fascinating because it's sort of hybriding high tech, low tech, and outputting something that's very easily accessible. So I wanted to sort of mention the idea of, like, where does this lead us as far as technology and art and everything. So there's this thing called singularity, which is basically the prediction by someone named Ray Kurzweil, who is basically an American author, computer scientist, inventor, and futurist. And so he predicts that in the future, there's this thing by around like 2045 or so, there's going to be this singularity of tech and humans. So people are going to be sort of combined with technology. And so in a sense, we become one with computers, and we become like the same as computers, and brought in our powers in whatever capacity. So when that ends up being the case, what kind of art are we going to create? There is computer systems now that sort of create art as it is, and there are ways to how do you say, like, get computers to create art, but we're sort of independent of that computer art. So when this does happen, which it's going to happen eventually, it's already kind of starting to happen with things like Google Glass, and but this is going to be like sort of integrated computer systems within humans. But then it's sort of going to perpetuate that cycle of putting art with technology and creating very interesting things. So if we were to get to this point, would we still paint? Would we paint? Would we make simple objects with this very advanced systems behind us? And how would it change things? Like, if we were to create a painting of a simple object as like just an everyday normal human with this super high technology, would we do something very simple and create very simple objects, or will we continue doing like something that we've always been done even without it? And I'm sort of fascinated by the idea of combining that technology and also using just antiquated technology to create things. And that's why with Google Dream it's really interesting, because I feel like it's sort of the onset of both artificial intelligence, art, creativity, and sort of creating computers to think creatively. But then again, you can also argue that computers aren't really thinking creatively. It's more of like a higher end thing. So let me try to think of some read some other things here. Let me show you another picture. Okay, so this is basically the birth of man. I believe it's birth of man, yeah. The Sistine Chapel. And this is Deep Dream's basically version of that. Now, let me see if I have any questions on the system, then I can talk more. Then I'll talk more about this. So no go on that. Okay, so the question is, I guess I'll read it out loud. I'm a photographer. That's sort of my more overriding skill, but I sort of know a bunch of different things about a bunch of different mediums, from game design to photography to videography, a whole bunch of different things. So the question here is, do you have any interest in partnering with people that can create algorithms to create your own pattern generation in photos, such as Google Dream does? And yeah, absolutely. That's what sort of I wanted to do, is I wanted to work with the code myself. Because it's an open source code, it's code in Python, which is a programming language. And because Google actually made it open source, so what that means is you can basically access the code, you can do as you wish with it, and you can tweak it at will. So I was very interested in this because I wanted to basically create different versions of Google Dream and different ideas of it, to make it into many different alterations. And because I'm a photographer, I've actually put some of my photos through it, and was trying to figure out some sort of way to make it into an interesting project that I'm sort of still working on right now. So the other question is, okay, so what output would be fascinating to see as far as something different from what Google Dream is already doing by generating animals and dogs and birds out of context? Would you want mine to look different? I don't know. I think I'm more so fascinated not necessarily by the specific output of it. I think I'm more interested in the idea of what it actually does, which is the thinking process. I'm sort of fascinated by the idea that Google has these millions and millions of images and just very quickly can just think of something and realize what something is. So, it's very interesting to see what it could end up being, as far as the more it's tweaked. It could be so as of right now, Google Dream sort of tends to steer towards kind of simple things like I said before, gazebos or birds or dogs or eyes. Actually, it's sort of fascinated by eyes. But that even is sort of the interesting thing too. Is why is it? It's sort of put in there as things it thinks it is, but it could be interesting to see what other things it could see. As far as the code goes, Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how would I create it with my photography. Could be something that, I mean, potentially you can make it into something that could actually go into a computer system if we just mess with the camera setup itself. So it can always constantly create images in real time. Now the only problem with this, I guess the only stipulation that this has is that it mostly needs, not mostly, it does need the internet basically to work, because it uses the, like I said, the Google image search. So that's one sort of like, I guess, hindrance. But let's see if there's anything else I can see as questions wise. I think there's another question. Okay, so one of the questions is, can we do the same with audio and video files? Can I see that? Okay, so yes and no. Okay, so that's actually one of the things I was considering doing. So, as you know, video is 24 frames per second. And theoretically, that's 24 pictures, or not theoretically, it's 24 pictures in 1 second, and you could potentially create a, you can run each of those pictures through Google Dream and output a video. So I was going to do this with the video, and I was going to create basically a video that's fully in Google Dream and see what happens. Because it would be such a sort of laborious, tedious process of doing 24 frames per second, and I potentially wanted this to be, you know, like around a 5-minute video. What I'm like gearing towards doing is trying to figure out a way to change the coding so I can potentially make a streamlined process to where it can actually alter multiple images at one time. So I'm in the process of doing that. As far as audio goes, I do not know of anything that does that as of yet through in like the sense of Google Dream aspect, because it's more of a visual medium as opposed to an audio medium. But as far as that goes, you could also argue that synthesizers and different synthesizers and like adjusters are sort of very similar to that, where you can sort of tweak sound and combine sound together. So the next question I see here is, with interest in the thinking process, what about the visual of computers that can take whole rooms to express the concept of images that are done? So let me see that again. So what are the... I'm not sure if I understand that question.
As an installation.
As an installation with the interest of...
A concept of the amount of computing that those
Like, is that a
algorithms.
possible thing to
Is that
do?
something that you would be interested in, to create some sort of installation that conveys how much information
Processing
is
power it takes?
how much is being yes, even though we see them with computers that are very compact, and just to convey the concept of just how much computing is being done. Is that something that interests you, like the history of the computer and using that as a visual form?
Well, I mean, so basically the question is along the lines of like to visualize how computers process and to sort of show how computers process and the level, I guess, of complexity of it. But I guess that all depends on what computer you end up using, because computers today, you can potentially have a very tiny Arduino like machine that does that. That could be smaller than like a cigarette box, you know. But I guess it could be interesting to sort of move this high tech into like a low tech medium and sort of output it out again, which could be really cool. Just to see what happens. I was also actually considering doing this art project that I actually haven't just got around to doing, of combining, basically taking the same picture hundreds of different ways, but with different things. So as low tech as I can get, as high tech as I can get, because it's gotten to the point now where we're sort of overwhelmed with the amount of tech that we have, that I think it's more interesting about how we can combine everything. I'm sort of fascinated by the new technologies, but it's also interesting to see what old technologies are still sticking around. So I wanted to create this project where I sort of use all of these high-tech, low-tech things and sort of try to discover what's the difference, what's holding up, how does it look and not look. So another question is, so Google Dream images are kind of psychedelic. Do you think about the notion of perception as well? And so I guess the question is referring to, do I think about that as like, so I guess like, okay, so I think it's what it's saying is, so the images are sort of psychedelic in the sense of they're sort of like basically out there, and do I think in that sort of perceptive nature as well? Is that what I'm understanding here as far as that question?
Just state that one more time.
So the question is, Google Dream images are kind of psychedelic. Do you think about the notion of perception as well?
I mean, I think they can go in two different directions. So thinking about like atmospheric perspective, I guess, is because it can be like clouding the atmospheric perspective because it's covering it with animals. But I think too, maybe it's talking about perspective because it's just one filter, possibly?
Well, I mean, I think it's... so I guess that goes back into the question of like how it's actually perceiving things and how it's viewing things, which I think definitely relates to I would say myself, and one of the reasons I am sort of fascinated by it is it is really interesting to see, and fun, frankly, to see what it's getting out of what. And I guess in my own life, I always try to see things differently, and I guess that's how all artists are, is they try to look at things that are sort of everyday and ask themselves, how can we see this differently? And this is why I love that, because it's just one of those things that sort of raises the bar in a sense of, saying, hey, here's what this does. Look, but it's not humans doing it anymore. It's computers. But then doing it in a very simple process. The coding itself is very simple, although which can easily be tweaked. So yeah, I think it's great in the sense that it's like sort of creating a computer that is artistic. So another question is, what output would be fascinating to see as far as something different from what Google Dream is already doing? It's a good question. I think what I want to see is something that's done in real time. So one of the things I'm sort of fascinated by is synesthesia. And actually a lot of artists have actually been interested in so synesthesia. Let's first answer what that is. So synesthesia is when neural networks in your brain basically misfire, or actually they don't misfire, they fire in different directions in the way they shouldn't. So let's say if you were to see the number 1, you would taste lemon in your mouth. So basically what's happening, or like let's say you hear a classical song and then you end up seeing the color blue. Now, a lot of folks that have synesthesia, there are some artists out there, like there's one artist that actually created hooked himself up to a webcam, and whenever he sees, so he's colorblind, and he sort of created his own synesthesia device that's very low tech because it's just a very simple webcam device. The Skype is trying to connect. Claire, and the Skype got kicked off.
Oh.
You have full bars. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, no, it just ended. So why don't we try to? It's connecting again. Okay, so let me just. Well, I guess the question is, should I wait for that or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, the call's dropped. All right, let me try to do it again. Can you send me that question or that? Or just text me like a screenshot of that, just so I have it on my phone. All right, can you send me that? And like the picture. We're having Skype issues, so if you could just bear with me a second. I'm trying to see if we can get the call back. this going? Okay, well, let me continue because looks like we got kicked off Skype here, but we can still continue with it. Okay, so anyways, well, where was I? I was talking about. Oh, okay. So synesthesia. There's this artist that created this device that he's colorblind, so he created this device. It's a webcam device, and he made it so that it's permanently attached to him. And whenever a color comes on the screen of the webcam, what happens is it sends a certain sound to him. So he, in a sense, can see color. So let's say he was to walk. One of the things he does is he walks in front of like paintings, and he sort of like tries to see like how paintings are, what colors they are, and how they sound. So like it's sort of a fascinating thing to see, like where's like sort of a simple technology and sort of simple concept of like synesthesia is coming. Let me see if you're connected. You shouldn't be kicked off. You might just have to re-log in. No, you're online. Okay. So I think it's something on their end.
Can we just quit and reopen?
Yeah, try that. So, okay. Can you send me that picture? So what we did was a sort of fun experiment. We were able to Google Dream this version of me. It was just like there you go. There it was. Which looks pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. So that's me Google Dreamized. And so like I said before, like that kind of looks like a little person on the left there in the lighter area. And I look sort of bird-like now. So with this thing, the more you go with it, then the more it becomes this sort of wonderful piece where it gets more and more detailed as you go. And yeah, I'm looking, so let's see if we have any more questions here. Can you show me the Twitter again for me? Can you bring it up? Thanks. Okay, let me see here. It's not working, so. See, I don't know why it would cut out so quickly. So I bring up the question of like what can you do? What can you do with this? So I sort of challenge everyone to sort of think about this concept of sort of integrating high and low technologies together. Raul has no internet, so it's on us. To bring the challenge of like how can you use low technology to combine it with your work? What can you do to sort of take technology and approach it in a way that looks at it differently? I'm fascinated by the idea of looking at things differently. And again, I think that's what makes a good artist, is sort of visualizing something, seeing what's been done, seeing how it's done, and putting it in a way that's never been seen before. And this is something that's never been seen before, because it's tech that has never been seen before. And so, like, I love that we are seeing a technology. We live in an age where we can have technology that creates things that we haven't seen. And yeah, where's that going to lead us? How is this going to lead us in the direction of art? I feel like we are often so heavily focused on where tech is, in the sense of, like, how can it make our life easier, but I don't think there's as much emphasis on, not to sound silly, but the kind of the fun, cool, interesting things that it can do for creativity and art, because it's mostly just used for convenience as opposed to something just purely aesthetic. So that being said, I would love to see your work, your ideas, and hopefully you use this in your own artwork, or use this concept of low-tech, or just technology in your work, just to be able to see things differently, because, you know, it's so much art is very much alike, and the more things you see that are different, the more interesting art gets. So yeah, my name is Andrew Vox, and I love chatting with you about this. And just I'm doing a little art project where I'm taking video every day of my life, and I'm going to currently add this as my video. Great. All right. I'll see you guys later.